The mining colony on Zerith 7 was hell with 3 moons. Sergeant Jessica Parker wiped the sweat from her forehead, leaving another streak of red dust across her skin. Her muscles screamed with exhaustion. 16 hours. That's how long they'd been working today. That's how long they worked every single day. The shock collar around her neck felt heavier than usual, the metal warm against her skin. 3 years she'd worn this thing. 3 years since the Krellians came to Earth's outer colonies with their warships and their lies. They'd come specifically for the women. Jessica still remembered the propaganda broadcasts they'd intercepted before the attack. The Krellian High Command had done their research, or so they thought. Human females were supposed to be the weaker ones. More emotional. More compliant. Easier to break and control than the men. The Krellians figured they'd make perfect slaves for the dangerous work their own species refused to do. They couldn't have been more wrong about that. Jessica looked around at the other women working in the pit. Lieutenant Kelly Brooks was 10 feet away, hauling rocks that would have made a grown man struggle. Kelly used to fly fighters for Earth Defense Force. Now she moved stones with the same mechanical precision she'd once used to pilot spacecraft through combat zones. Her face was blank, emotionless, but Jessica knew better. Kelly was counting. Always counting. Guard rotations. Shift changes. Weaknesses in the security patterns. Dr. Diana Mills worked nearby, her hands bloody from the rough stone. Diana was their secret weapon, though the Krellians didn't know it. Before capture, she'd been one of Earth's top Xenotech engineers. While the guards thought she was just another broken slave, Diana spent every moment studying the alien technology around them. She memorized every symbol on every piece of equipment. She understood how their weapons worked, how their security systems functioned, how their whole operation ran. Then there was Corporal Tara Stone. Weapons specialist. Former Marine. The Krellians thought they'd beaten the fight out of her, but Jessica noticed the small things. The way Tara would stretch in specific patterns during breaks. The subtle flexing of muscles to maintain combat readiness. The way her eyes constantly tracked the guards' positions. Tara was ready. They all were. They just needed the right moment. Move faster, humans. The overseer's voice cut through the air like a whip. His translator device made his alien clicking sounds into harsh words. He gestured with all 4 of his arms, waving the shock remote like a threat. The deep chamber must be cleared by nightfall. The deep chamber. Jessica felt her heart beat faster at the mention of it. 2 weeks ago, Diana had noticed something odd in the geological scans the Krellians were running. Something big buried deep under the rock and ice. Something old. The Krellians had gotten excited, really excited, and that meant something valuable was down there. They'd been digging ever since. Crude explosives to break the big stuff, then their bare hands for the delicate work. The Krellians didn't want to risk damaging whatever was inside, so they used their slaves as cheap, replaceable labor. Today, after 14 days of non-stop excavation, they'd finally broken through. Jessica volunteered to go in first. The overseer didn't care who went in as long as someone did. She grabbed a portable light and stepped through the breach in the ancient door. The air inside was stale, untouched for who knew how long. Her light beam cut through the darkness. Then she saw it and her breath caught in her throat. The chamber was massive. The ceiling stretched up so high her light couldn't reach it. Had to be at least 200 feet, maybe more. And in the center of the room, covered in centuries of dust and surrounded by equipment she couldn't begin to understand, stood something that made her heart race. Was a machine. But not just any machine. This thing was enormous, at least 150 feet tall, shaped like a human but built for war. Its armor was scarred and burnt, telling stories of ancient battles. She could see weapon systems built into the arms, massive gun barrels on the shoulders, and what looked like engine ports on the back. The chest had a window like a cockpit, and even covered in dust it gleamed with a strange inner light. A war titan. Jessica had heard stories about ancient civilizations that built these things, but she'd always thought they were myths. Legends. But here one was real and solid, standing in the darkness like a sleeping giant. What is this scrap? The Krellian commander pushed past her, his mandibles clicking with disgust. He walked around the Titan's massive feet, barely coming up to its ankle. Worthless old junk. Clear it out. We need this chamber for proper storage facilities. Jessica had to fight to keep her face neutral. The Krellians couldn't recognize what they were looking at. To them it was just ancient garbage. But Jessica knew better. She'd served in enough wars to recognize a weapon when she saw one. She caught Kelly's eye as the pilot entered the chamber. Saw the recognition there. The spark of possibility. Diana came in next, immediately studying the panels and systems with barely concealed excitement. Tara followed, her tactical mind already analyzing how something this powerful could change everything. The Krellians had just made the biggest mistake of their lives. They'd handed their slaves the key to freedom and told them to throw it away. Diana's hands wouldn't stop shaking as she connected the final power relay. Her fingers were raw and bleeding from 3 weeks of non-stop work. 3 weeks of stealing tools right under the guards' noses. 3 weeks of smuggling energy cells one at a time, hiding them in her clothes, in her hair, anywhere the Krellians wouldn't think to look. 3 weeks of pretending to clean what the aliens dismissed as worthless scrap. But it wasn't scrap. Not even close. The Titan's systems hummed to life under her touch. The sound was so soft that only she could hear it through the diagnostic panel she'd managed to pry open. Her heart pounded. After all this time, all this risk, it was actually working. The ancient machine was responding to her repairs. Status. Jessica's whisper came from near the chamber entrance. She was keeping watch, ready to warn them if any guards came close. Diana didn't look up from her work. Her eyes scanned the alien symbols on the display panel. After 3 weeks of studying them every spare second, she'd started to understand the language. 70% functionality, she whispered back. The AI core is intact but dormant. Main weapons systems are fully operational. The shields need more work, but they'll hold under fire. Jessica, this thing was built to fight entire fleets. She paused, letting that sink in. The Krellians had cruisers in orbit. Gunships. Weapons that could level cities. And they'd just given their slaves access to something that was designed to destroy ships like that. The irony was almost beautiful. Kelly stood at the base of the Titan's access ladder, staring up at the cockpit so far above. The ladder was built into the machine's leg, leading up to that glowing window in the chest. Her hands clenched and unclenched at her sides. She'd been a pilot once. The best in her squadron. She understood what Diana was really saying. Someone had to go up there. Someone had to bond with this thing. And whoever did might not survive the process. When? Kelly's voice was steady. No fear. Just the question. Jessica was quiet for a moment. Diana knew she was calculating risks, running through scenarios in her head. That's what made Jessica a good leader. She didn't rush. She thought things through. But she also knew when it was time to act. Tonight, Jessica finally said. The supply ship arrives at 2,200 hours. That's 10 at night for those keeping human time. The guards will be distracted during unloading. They always are. That's our window. That's when we move. Tara looked up from the corner where she'd been working. She had components spread out in front of her, pieces of mining charges that she'd carefully disassembled and rebuilt into something much more dangerous. Her hands moved with practiced skill, connecting wires and setting timers. I've rigged the armory and the communications tower, she said quietly. When this kicks off, they won't be able to call for backup right away. At least not immediately. How long do we have? Kelly asked the question they were all thinking. Tara's expression was grim. Maybe 30 minutes before the orbital ships figure out something's wrong and respond. Then we're facing gunships at minimum. Possibly a cruiser if they're feeling threatened enough. 30 minutes. Diana felt her stomach twist. 30 minutes to fight their way out against 200 guards, secure the facility, and somehow deal with whatever came from orbit. The odds were terrible. But then again, the odds had been terrible since the day they were captured. At least now they had a chance. Jessica moved to the center of their small group. In the dim light of the chamber, with the ancient Titan looming behind her, she looked different. Not like a slave. Like what she really was. A soldier. A leader. Diana saw the same transformation in the others. Kelly's pilot instincts sharpening. Tara's combat readiness coming to the surface. 3 years of pretending to be broken, and in this moment they were finally showing their true selves. Listen to me, Jessica said, her voice low but intense. We all knew the risks when we enlisted. Every single one of us. We swore an oath to protect Earth and her people. That oath didn't stop mattering when the Krellians put these collars on us. She reached up and touched the shock collar at her neck. They all wore them. Symbols of their slavery. Tonight, we remind the galaxy who we really are. Diana felt tears prick her eyes. 3 years of torture. Of degradation. Of being treated like animals. The Krellians had tried so hard to break them. They'd succeeded with some. But not with these women. Not with the ones standing in this chamber. The other prisoners, Kelly said. We have 47 women in this facility. We can't leave anyone behind. We won't, Jessica promised. Tara, your explosions will draw most of the guards away from the barracks. Diana, once Kelly activates the Titan, you lead the rescue team. Get everyone to the eastern perimeter. It's the most defensible position. And you? Diana asked. Jessica smiled, and it wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of someone who'd been waiting 3 years for payback. I'll be making sure the Krellians understand their mistake. They thought we were weak. They thought we were helpless. They're about to learn what happens when you underestimate human women. The plan was set. The pieces were in place. In a few hours, everything would change. Either they'd be free or they'd be dead. But at least they wouldn't be slaves anymore. Kelly walked to the Titan's ladder and put her hand on the first rung. Let's do this right, she said. For everyone they took from us. For all the women who didn't survive to see this day. They stood together in the darkness, for women who'd survived hell, about to fight their way out with a weapon from a dead civilization. The Krellians had made so many mistakes. But their biggest one was simple. They'd left these women alive long enough to find hope. And hope, in the right hands, was more dangerous than any weapon. The Krellian combat mechs came rolling out of their bunkers like angry metal beasts. 12 of them. Each one stood 20 feet tall, bristling with weapons. Rail cannons mounted on their shoulders. Missile pods on their backs. These machines had been specifically designed to crush slave uprisings and wipe out resistance fighters. The Krellians were proud of them. They'd used these mechs to break countless rebellions across dozens of worlds. But they'd never faced anything like what Kelly was piloting. Inside Prometheus 7's cockpit, Kelly felt the ancient war machine's tactical systems come alive in her mind. The neural link was incredible. She could feel every sensor, every weapon, every system as if it were part of her own body. The Titan's AI began analyzing the targets, calculating trajectories, predicting movements. It all happened in microseconds, faster than thought. Time seemed to slow down around her. Kelly raised the Titan's right arm, and a massive kinetic railgun deployed from the forearm with a mechanical whir. The targeting system locked onto 6 mechs simultaneously. Kelly didn't even have to think about it. Her intent flowed through the neural link and the Titan responded. 6 shots. 6 thunderous booms that echoed across the facility. 6 Krellian mechs exploded into fragments before their pilots even understood what was happening. Metal and fire rained down across the compound. Weapons free, Kelly whispered, her voice calm despite the adrenaline flooding her system. She stopped trying to control the Titan manually and let its combat AI guide her movements. The ancient programming knew what to do. It had fought wars before humans even existed. Prometheus 7 moved like liquid death. There was no other way to describe it. Something that massive shouldn't have been able to move so fast, so smoothly, but it did. A Krellian mech charged from the left side, its pilot screaming war cries. The Titan's response was simple and brutal. One massive fist came down like a hammer from the sky. The mech crumpled into the ground, crushed flat, its pilot dead before he could scream. More mechs opened fire. Missiles streaked toward the war Titan from 3 different directions, their contrails leaving white lines in the night sky. Kelly felt a moment of panic, but the Titan systems were already responding. Energy shields flared to life around the massive machine, forming a barrier of crackling blue energy. The missiles hit the shields and exploded harmlessly, their fire washing over the barrier like water. Kelly spun Prometheus 7 in a complete circle, moving with grace that defied physics. The shoulder-mounted plasma cannons charged and fired in one smooth motion. Superheated plasma bolts lanced across the battlefield. 2 more Krellian mechs dissolved into molten slag, their armor melting like butter, their pilots vaporized instantly. Down on the ground, Jessica led her team through the chaos. They moved like ghosts through the smoke and fire, heading for the prisoner barracks. The explosions had worked perfectly. Most of the guards had rushed toward the armory and communications tower, leaving the barracks lightly defended. Jessica and her team took down the remaining guards quickly and efficiently. 3 years of pretending to be weak slaves, and now they moved like the trained soldiers they'd always been. Go, go, go! Jessica shouted, throwing open the barracks doors. Women poured out, confused and scared but desperate for freedom. Head for the eastern perimeter. Stay low and move fast. Tara had taken position on top of a guard tower, using a rifle she'd taken from a dead Krellian officer. She was in her element now. Every shot counted. Every bullet found its target. Krellian officers trying to rally their troops. Squad leaders trying to organize a counterattack. Tara made sure none of them succeeded. The aliens were panicking now. Their carefully controlled facility was descending into total chaos, and they had no idea how to handle it. Kelly, we've got gunships inbound. Diana's voice crackled through the communication system, urgent and sharp. 4 contacts coming in fast from the north. They're heavily armed. Kelly looked up through Prometheus 7's sensors. She could see them coming. 4 Krellian gunships, sleek and deadly, screaming over the compound at high speed. Their weapon systems were already locking onto the Titan, painting it with targeting lasers. These weren't cargo ships. These were military attack craft, each one carrying enough firepower to level a building. They all fired at once. Heavy cannon rounds, the kind that could shred armored vehicles like paper, converged on Prometheus 7 from 4 directions. The sound was deafening. The impact should have torn the Titan apart. The shields held. Blue energy crackled and flared as the cannon rounds hit the barrier and bounced off. The Titan stood firm, unmoved, untouched. Kelly felt a savage joy surge through her. 3 years of helplessness. 3 years of being at their mercy. Not anymore. She looked up at the gunships circling above and smiled grimly. Prometheus 7's back-mounted weapon pods opened with a mechanical hiss, revealing dozens of sleek tracking missiles nested inside. The ancient targeting systems locked onto all 4 aircraft simultaneously. AI, Kelly said softly, her voice cold as ice, engage aerial targets. The missiles launched in a swarm, leaving trails of fire as they streaked upward into the night sky. The Krellian pilots tried to evade, deploying countermeasures and breaking formation. But these weren't modern missiles. These were weapons from a civilization that had perfected warfare 10,000 years ago. 4 explosions lit up the darkness like new suns. Burning wreckage rained down across the facility. The gunships were gone, erased from existence in seconds. Kelly's voice boomed across the compound through the Titan's external speakers. Any Krellian who wants to live, run. Run now. Tell your commanders what happened here. Tell them that humans remember who they are. The remaining guards didn't need to be told twice. They ran. The stellar lance wasn't just a weapon. It was a nightmare from an age when wars didn't happen on planets or even in single star systems. It came from a time when entire galaxies burned. The ancient civilization that built Prometheus 7 had created it as a last resort, a final answer to threats that couldn't be stopped any other way. A focused beam of exotic particles that could punch through any shielding, any armor, anything that stood in its way. But there was a price. Using the stellar lance would drain the Titan to critical levels. It would leave Kelly and her machine vulnerable, maybe even dead in space. Through the neural link, Kelly felt the weapon powering up. It was like holding a star in her hands. Every system in Prometheus 7 began redirecting power to a single point in the Titan's chest. Life support dimmed. Shields flickered. Secondary weapons went offline. Everything the ancient machine had was being channeled into one devastating strike. Kelly's body convulsed in the cockpit. She could feel the massive energy build up as if it were happening inside her own chest. The Titan's power core strained under the load, pushed beyond its normal limits. Temperature warnings flashed across her vision. System alerts screamed in languages she didn't understand. But she held on. She had to. The Krellian dreadnought extinction hammer loomed in the void ahead. 2 miles long. A moving fortress. It carried enough weapons to destroy a planet. Right now, every one of those weapons was aimed at her. Fire, Kelly whispered. The stellar lance fired. The beam that erupted from Prometheus 7's chest was pure white light, so bright it hurt to look at even through the filtered sensors. It lanced across the void between them, a spear of white-hot death moving at a significant fraction of light speed. The extinction hammer's shields were legendary. They could withstand sustained bombardment from an entire fleet. They lasted less than a second against the stellar lance. The beam punched through them like they were made of paper. Then it hit the armor. The dreadnought's hull was made of composite metals that could withstand nuclear strikes. The lance went through it like butter. Through the outer hull. Through deck after deck. Through bulkheads and corridors and crew quarters. Straight into the main reactor at the heart of the massive ship. For one heartbeat, nothing happened. The beam cut off. Prometheus 7 went dark, its power completely drained. Kelly hung in the cockpit harness, gasping for breath, her body racked with pain from the feedback through the neural link. Then the extinction hammer exploded. It didn't just break apart. It erupted from within, its reactor going critical in a chain reaction that consumed the entire vessel. The explosion was so massive, so bright, that it was visible from Zerith 7's surface 50,000 miles away. A new star blooming in the night sky. 2 miles of warship and 4,000 Krellian crew, gone in an instant. Kelly screamed as the feedback flooded her neural link. It felt like her brain was on fire. She could feel Prometheus 7 systems failing around her. Power levels dropped to 20%. Shield systems offline. Main weapons offline. Life support running on emergency reserves. She'd killed the dreadnought, but the Titan was vulnerable now. Crippled. And through the pain in the system warnings, Kelly saw them. 2 cruisers. Still out there. Still armed. Still very much capable of killing her. Target is disabled. The Krellian admiral's voice crackled across all communication frequencies, filled with rage and grief. All ships concentrate fire. Avenge the hammer. Kill that thing. The 2 remaining cruisers opened fire with everything they had. Without shields, Prometheus 7 took direct hits. Armor plates shattered. Secondary systems exploded. Kelly felt each impact like a punch to her own body. The neural link translated the damage into pain, and she couldn't stop screaming. Critical damage detected, the Titan's AI announced calmly as if they weren't about to die. Pilot neural buffer failing. Hull breaches on multiple decks. Recommend immediate withdrawal. Can't withdraw, Kelly gasped through gritted teeth. She forced the Titan to move, using maneuvering thrusters to dodge the worst of the incoming fire. But it was like trying to fight with broken limbs. Every movement was agony. Have to finish this. But she was losing. She knew it. The math was brutal and simple. 2 fully armed cruisers against a crippled war Titan operating at minimum power. They would tear her apart. It was just a matter of time. More impacts. More damage. Kelly could taste blood in her mouth. Her vision was going dark at the edges. The neural link was overloading, feeding her more pain than her brain could process. Kelly, hold on. Jessica's voice cut through the chaos. Help is coming. Kelly tried to laugh, but it came out as a cough. What are you talking about? There is no help. We're alone out here. Diana found something in Prometheus's database, Jessica said urgently. There are more Titans. She sent out activation signals days ago. Kelly's fading vision focused on her sensors. 6 new contacts were dropping out of faster-than-light travel, decelerating into combat range. 6 more war Titans, each one bearing the scars of ancient battles, each one carrying weapons that could end worlds. A voice boomed across all channels, deep and powerful. Prometheus 7, this is Apollo 3. We received your beacon. We're here. Titanfall formation. Engaging hostile vessels. Kelly felt tears streaming down her face. She wasn't alone. After 10,000 years of silence, the ancient guardians had awakened. And they were angry. The Krellian Empire's response was swift and brutal. They weren't going to let this insult stand. Within 72 hours, a full battle fleet assembled at the edge of the sector. 15 capital ships. 40 support vessels. Carriers, destroyers, frigates, all bristling with weapons. This fleet carried enough firepower to sterilize Zerith 700 times over. They could turn the entire planet into a lifeless ball of glass if they wanted to. Admiral Krexthor personally led the armada. He was the Empire's most decorated military commander, a veteran of 30 campaigns, responsible for crushing rebellions on a dozen worlds. He'd never lost a battle. Not once in 40 years of service. And he wasn't about to start now, especially not to a handful of escaped slaves. His message was broadcast across every frequency, ensuring that everyone in the sector could hear it. Humans of Zerith 7. You have stolen Krellian property and destroyed Imperial vessels. Surrender the war Titans immediately. You have 6 hours to comply. Failure to do so will result in complete orbital annihilation. Every living thing on that planet will die. This is your only warning. Jessica stood in the makeshift command center they'd set up in the former guard barracks. Around her stood the 47 freed women, every single one of them. They'd called a vote. Democracy even now, even facing annihilation. That's what made them human. That's what made them different from the Krellians. The decision was unanimous. Not one woman voted to surrender. Kelly, Jessica said into the communication system, her voice steady. Send our reply. High in orbit, Kelly sat in Prometheus 7's cockpit. The Titan was docked with a hastily established command platform they'd cobbled together from salvaged Krellian equipment. It wasn't pretty, but it worked. 6 other Titans floated nearby in formation, their massive forms silhouetted against the planet below. Each Titan had a pilot now. Diana had managed to activate the other ancient machines just in time, and they'd found women willing to risk the neural bonding process. Brenda Hayes in Apollo 3, the first to respond to the distress call. Holly Chin piloting Athena 9, her neural sync already showing remarkable stability. Amber Rodriguez in Diana 4, weapons hot and ready. Whitney Palmer in Artemis 6, still learning her systems but determined. Crystal Washington in Hades 2, the quietest of them all but perhaps the deadliest. Anne Victoria Mills in Zeus 8, whose laughter over the comm channel kept everyone's spirits up even in the darkest moments. 7 women. 7 war titans. Facing a fleet designed to exterminate them. Kelly keyed the broadcast, making sure it went out on every frequency, just like the Admiral's threat. She wanted the whole galaxy to hear this. Admiral Crexthor, this is Pilot Kelly Brooks of Earth. Let me make something very clear. We are not your property. We were never your property. You came to our homes. You took us by force. You broke our bodies with your work. You tried to break our spirits with your cruelty. She paused, letting her words sink in across the void. But you made one mistake. Just one. You left us alive long enough to find hope. And hope is more dangerous than any weapon you possess. 6 hours? We don't need 6 hours to prepare. Come now. We're ready for you. The communication channel erupted with Krellian threats and outrage. Officers screaming about insolence. Demands for immediate execution. Promises of torture and death. Kelly muted it all with a flick of her mind through the neural interface. She didn't need to hear their posturing. She opened a private channel to the other Titan pilots. Brenda, status on Apollo 3? All systems green. Brenda's voice came back calm and professional. Weapons charged. Shields at maximum. Neural sync is holding steady. I'm ready to dance. Holly? Athena 9 is operational, Holly reported. I've got full weapons capability. The AI and I are getting along just fine. Let them come. Amber? Diana, for reporting ready, Amber said, and Kelly could hear the grin in her voice. I've been a slave for 4 years. 4 years of eating dirt and taking their abuse. Today I get to hit back. I've never been more ready for anything in my life. One by one the pilots reported in. 7 voices. 7 women who'd survived hell. 7 warriors bonded to weapons from a civilization that had fought wars across galaxies. Below them, on Zerith 7's surface, the freed slaves had fortified their positions using every piece of salvaged Krellian equipment they could find. They weren't trained soldiers like Jessica and her core team, but they'd learned to fight. More importantly, they'd learned they weren't helpless. And they weren't alone anymore. Messages had been spreading across the sector for days now. Encrypted transmissions. Smuggled data packets. Whispers in slave pens and labor camps on a dozen worlds. The humans had fought back. The humans had won. Other species had heard. Other slaves were listening. Hope was spreading like wildfire through the Krellian Empire, and Admiral Crexthor could bring his fleet. He could bring 1,000 ships. It wouldn't matter. Because something had changed in the galaxy. Something fundamental. The slaves remembered they were people. And people who remember their worth cannot be kept in chains. All Titans, Kelly said softly into the comm formation Omega. Protect the planet at all cost. If they want to hurt the people below, they'll have to go through us first. Copy that, 6 voices responded as one. The Krellian fleet began its approach. Weapons charging. Targeting systems active. Confident in their overwhelming numbers. They had no idea what was about to hit them.